And I now call upon the Minister for Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation, the Honourable Rosy Akbar. You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honourable Prime Minister, Honourable Cabinet Ministers, Honourable Leader of Opposition, Honourable Members, I rise to thank His Excellency The President for his most gracious speech on the 22nd of November 2021 in this August Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I must firstly congratulate His Excellency on his appointment. I must say it is an honour to have listened to his passionate reminder on the call of duty on all of us. As we move into a new year in the Fijian Parliament, the message from His Excellency is indeed one that should set the focus for us as representatives of our Fijian people. Mr. Speaker, I join the Honourable Prime Minister in congratulating our Sevens team on their recent performance over the weekend in Dubai. I'd also like to thank the Fijiana team for their splendid ranking in this tournament, and I know those days are not far away when we will top at the table for any championship. Congratulations to our ladies. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to stand in solidarity and pray for a peaceful resolution to the turmoil happening in Solomon, where our brothers and sisters are affected. And I hope and pray that a peaceful resolution, a calm resolution, is at the earliest, so that the sufferings of those brothers and sisters in Solomon comes to an end. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this year that has gone was not the easiest for us as parliamentary leaders, and it was obviously because of the unprecedented situation we were faced since early 2020, a situation that demanded quick decisions, a situation that demanded critical thinking, a situation that demanded proper reasoning, a situation that demanded compassion for our people, and a situation that also demanded firmness in decisions unlike ever before, and of course a situation that not only threatened us at the given time, but also threatens our well-being in the future. And as a government, Mr. Speaker, a government that has always considered the needs of the future as well as the present, this challenge was doubled because COVID-19 times are times unlike any other, and the wrath of the second wave of the virus earlier this year had truly challenged us in ways we had never heard of. But yet again, together as a nation, we have overcome the challenges of the COVID-19 times and are back on the road to recovery. However, the protocols set by the Ministry of Health must be followed at all times because we are not out of the danger yet. Mr. Speaker, having said that, I wish to thank all our frontline workers, hundreds of nurses, doctors, teachers, disciplined force staff, civil servants, essential service providers, and volunteers for their commitment and diligence in carrying out the call of duty. I must also take this time to thank all those Fijians who took it upon themselves to personally help other fellow Fijians in these trying times. Mr. Speaker, today we remain one. This is that Fiji that they refer to when they say Fiji, the way the world should be. We couldn't have done it without you. So thank you to all. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I applaud His Excellency's mention of the fact that it is the public's participation that will bring to life the democracy of the Fijian Constitution. I must reiterate that on our road to recovery, this is the very thing that we have to keep in mind. Our rights are very well enshrined in the Fijian Constitution as well as and the economic participation is an equal right of every Fijian. We cannot undermine the power of our Fijian people and their skills in helping us bounce back as an economy and as a nation. And this includes all our Fijian men and women. I emphasize that we as a people must take steps to ensure that our women are fully empowered to actively participate in our economy. Again, in reference to what His Excellency had said about public participation, may I take this time to reiterate that it is not only the constitutional right for all Fijians, I'm talking about the age to vote, but also to be able to contest elections. And I encourage more women who aspire to attain political leadership or intend to go on the path to do so. I say this. Look around this room, Mr. Speaker, we all know that we are still underrepresented in Parliament. And I urge all those aspiring women leaders to please take part in the coming elections. And of course, I must say, if we don't vote for women, then women will never make it to this house. Women need votes to enter this house as well. I say this, Mr. Speaker, because we've taken huge strides in creating more gender-inclusive work environments, but there's still much work to be done. While the far-reaching benefits of diversity and gender parity in leadership and decision-making are increasingly recognized in all spheres, women continue to be massively underrepresented in leadership positions and the decision-making processes in politics, business, and communities. In order to advance gender justice and gender equality, it is critical that our women hold positions of leadership and participate actively in decision-making processes at all levels. This is also important for advancing economic, social, and political progress for all. We need more women leaders on board now than ever before, and while we can see more women contesting elections, we should also be able to see more people vote for women leaders. Let me reiterate that. Mr. Speaker said today more Fijians than usual are in need of financial support, and the government did not at any time forget or neglect the fact that the most vulnerable will be the worst affected. It is a reality all over the world, and only responsible governments have accepted it. I say responsible because accepting the truth of the matter is the only way to find a solution to any problem. I say responsible because at a time when incoming government revenue was and is limited, the cuts had to be made in every possible budget line. But the allocation for the Minister of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation received a demand-based increase, especially to ensure the beneficiaries under our 6 major social protection programs continue to get their assistance. I say responsible because the Fijian government had already established great ties with other governments and development partners who have come to aid of our people when we most needed them. I say responsible because even when things were fine, this government looked to better the future, and this progressive thinking is what ensured that we remain stable, even in the biggest crisis we ever faced, especially when it came to supporting the needs of the most vulnerable members of our society. Mr. Speaker, said my ministry through the REACH platform had successfully supported the Ministry of Health and Medical Services in the COVID-19 vaccination campaign. The 3 REACH buses had offered a walk-in service to Fijians in the urban and peri-urban areas who had faced difficulties in commuting to nearby Ministry of Health fixed vaccination facilities. To further demonstrate the government's love for every Fijian, irrespective of their physical ability, geographical location, or financial status, the Fijian government, in partnership with UNDP and the government of Japan, will continue to roll out mobile one-stop service delivery, which enables all our state and non-state organizations to conduct awareness raising, etc. Mr. Speaker, earlier this month, I'm very happy, I was blessed with my first grandchild. Obviously, I'm overjoyed by this. But whenever I hold him, whenever I cuddle him and hug him, and I look into his innocent eyes, I ask this question to myself: what is it that I will leave behind for this little one? And that is the question I ask all of us here today. What are we going to leave behind for our thousands and hundreds of thousands of children, our grandchildren, for the future? Are we going to leave them polluted oceans? Are we going to leave them depleted marine and agricultural resources? Are we going to leave them barren lands with no water sources? Are we going to leave them with a life filled with daily challenges to even find fresh foods? An environment where even breathing will become a hazard? And I'm sure across the globe, millions of people are asking themselves the same questions. Thousands of leaders are asking themselves the same question. And I want us to ask, is it really too hard to look beyond ourselves to what we have today and think about the future? Mr. Speaker said that is the reason we need to fight climate change, because it threatens the very survival of us and our future generation. I support His Excellency's call on us to begin for the future, looking beyond our segregation as parties and politicians with this new season. And this includes work that can change mindsets, work that can change the way we treat our people, work that can make change to human equality and dignity in a norm that is not something we have to constantly fight for. Work that will secure the future of our children. Work that will change, if it wasn't for typical mindsets and stereotypes, Mr. Speaker, say maybe today, maybe now, the impact of any crisis wouldn't be particularly devastating for certain groups of our people. Mr. Speaker, we know the differentiated impacts that COVID-19 it has had on our men and women, and especially women, the most vulnerable population. The same differentiated impact is of climate change on women and vulnerable groups. The entire region is highly vulnerable to climate change impacts. The London School of Economics estimated that across the Pacific Island, home to 10 million people, up to 1.7 million could be displaced due to climate change by 2050. Half of this will obviously be women. And that is something that we need to be really, really serious about. Historically, Mr. Speaker, climate change policies did not address the different ways in which climate change affected men, women, and children. Given existing gender inequalities and development gaps, climate change ultimately places a greater burden on us women. Men and women are affected by climate change in different ways because of the societal and cultural roles and expectations and the respective responsibilities that is imposed on them or informed made on them by families and communities. For example, in many communities, women are primary food producers and providers of water and cooking fuel for their families. Therefore, they need to have greater responsibilities for families and community welfare. Understanding the climate change impacts on men and women differently is therefore necessary to ensure that we have gender-sensitive climate policies that are informed by women and address the reality of their needs. The government of Fiji, especially our Honourable Prime Minister, had given high priority to COP23 and aimed to continue the momentum for action since its entry into force of the Paris Climate Change Agreement. We achieved new heights while the adoption of the Gender Action Plan at COP23 in 2017, and that was just the first step. Fiji has put in place actions, therefore, which is why, as His Excellency had said, we brought a Climate Change Act at the world to COP26 that legislates the same commitments we are asking of all nations. Because if we don't only seek a little hopeful future from others, we create it for ourselves, unquote. The big work is implementation, and the work is now doubly urgent with coronavirus pandemic compounding the challenges faced by our people, especially for the future generation. Honourable Speaker, the member who spoke before me talked about coronavirus and climate change and all that. But the reality of the matter, Mr. Speaker, says we as leaders have to understand the impacts of this on our people. COVID-19 is a reality. And to hear some members talk about it being something else, etc., is just absurd. Mr. Speaker, real progress on human development is not only a matter of enlarging people's choices to lead a healthy, long life, to be educated, and to enjoy a decent standard of living. It is also about ensuring that these choices are secure. These choices are secure and sustainable. And that requires us to understand and tackle vulnerability. Those who are particularly vulnerable, such as the poor and other disadvantaged groups, do not have the same resilience when there is any form of instability. There are two basic propositions. One, that people's vulnerability is influenced by the levels of capability, such as health, education, income, personal security, and the social positions. The other one is that failure to protect people against vulnerability are often a consequence of poor social institutions. The Fijian government recognizes this well, and I'm glad that our ministry forms an important part of the latter for our Fijian people. Mr. Speaker, effective social protections are crucial to safeguard the poor and vulnerable when crisis hits. While we can boast of having political will to continue the Fijian government's social protection programs, the times we are presently in are demanding us to leverage the existing social protection systems to help our families and businesses restore income, preserve livelihoods, and compensate for price hikes. It demands from us to enhance the preparedness of our social protection systems and build resilience against future crises. Keeping this in mind, Mr. Speaker, we now have in place Fiji's first ever targeted social protection policy, which of course we will build on in the near very future, especially cover the missing middle or the people who are affected by the crisis in terms of income, but do not generally qualify for the normal social protection programs. The speech by His Excellency, Mr. Speaker, has been a perfect reflection on the power of unity. And Mr. Speaker, I just couldn't agree more. And if I add to it, the same whole-of-nation effort is needed and truly is the answer to end many social ills that we now face with this day and age. And by now, one must have guessed what my main concern would be now. Violence against women and children. Violence against our women and girls. Of course, what we know as domestic violence. Mr. Speaker, Fiji's incidences of violence against women and girls is unfortunately amongst the highest in the world, and situations like COVID and disasters often lead to an increase in such cases. And there's no better time for me to address this as we now stand in the 16 days of activism to end gender-based violence period. Mr. Speaker, philosophically, as long as there is an imbalance of power, we will always have violence, domestic and all other forms. We need to create awareness not just once a year for 16 days, but almost on a daily basis, but every day, and ambit in our formal and informal education. We need to have measures to place to recognize the existence of it and how we can stop the vulnerable. Basically, create awareness at every possible avenue and level. And I urge all the honourable members, at your community level, at your organisational level, at the grassroots level, please continue talking about it. Cases need to be reported. Domestic violence, violence against women, children and girls needs to be made a personal business. It's everybody's business. You can call the police, you can call our helpline and report this. And of course, it's going to take us a long time before we can break those patriarchal cultural norms that creates this imbalance of power. Mr. Speaker, violence against women and girls has been said again and again, and it's preventable. And if you all get involved, make it our business to talk about it, to condemn it, to challenge the patriarchal foundations that upholds it, to raise children with good values, to stop blaming the victims, to break the silence, we will make the change. We will make this country a country where women needs to always feel safe. This year, Mr. Speaker, was a great year of great efforts that our ministry has been pulling together with funding support from governments of New Zealand and government of Canada, with technical expertise from UN Women and the gender advisor to the Fijian government, funded by the Australian government, and with most of the commitments nearing completion. The national women's machinery, through a transformative ambition to focus on policies, has done a bulk of work around elimination of violence against women and girls, women in leadership, women's economic empowerment, gender and climate action, and women's access to services. The three major initiatives of the National Women's Machinery this year and the upcoming events are the National Action Plan for Preventing Violence Against All Women and Girls. Of course, we are doing it with the partnership with the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Employment, Productivity and Industrial Relations. Started in 2020, and we are still in the final quarter of our national consultations. We had the last consultation in the North last week, Thursday, and we are learning the real causes of these attitudes that lead to gender violence as we go along the country with our 13 sectors, including our media as well. Mr. Speaker, the National Action Plan is a whole-of-government, evidence-based, measurable, inclusive and funded 5-year plan, 2021 to 2025, with the emphasis of stopping violence before it starts. And we can do that. Gender transformative institutional capacity building. The Cabinet endorsed this on the 6th of February 2022, and this initiative is also led by the Ministry, and it's designed in response to challenges such as limited awareness, knowledge and technical skills on gender transformative concepts. Mr. Speaker, the Republic of Fiji country gender assessment is a key report to be undertaken periodically by the Ministry, and we will provide a comprehensive overview of gender issues in all sectors. Mr. Speaker, His Excellency mentioned the introduction of a Child Care and Protection Bill and a Child Justice Bill in the upcoming year, and we at the Ministry are very glad and we welcome that. These legislations, Mr. Speaker, are important to safeguard the rights of our children and will further cement the Fijian government's commitment to child protection. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I wish to highlight that this year has been particularly hard for our children, with lockdowns for months that restricted their movements, the impact of school closure on their education, the challenge of adapting to new methods and modes of attending classes, time away from the extracurricular activities for a long period, and of course away from their friends and teachers. Of course, the effect of all these circumstances on their mental health and well-being. I urge all parents and guardians to try and understand the challenges that the children must have gone through. Please support them with their mental, especially with their mental health needs. Spend as much time with your children as possible. And I'd also like to record my thanks again to the parents who assisted us in keeping their children safe at home. Of course, the teachers for the support that they provided. And Mr. Speaker, finally, I'd like to say that our foresight of the future has to be very clear. Let's not pretend that all is well. Let's not pretend that shifting blame on each other will fix what awaits us in the near future. We, all of us, need to act now in ways that considers the impact of our actions and decisions on our future, especially our children. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to wish all the members of this Honourable House a very, very Merry Christmas and a blessed New Year. Restful holidays, please be safe, and we will see you in the next session. Thank you.
I thank the Honourable Minister for contribution to the debate. I now give the floor